And so sex is another thing where people want to teach on it, and I love the concept, but let's be truthful of the intention of what sex was. It was procreation, obviously, right? But it was intended for pleasure. It was a spiritual... Sex is a physical metaphor, a physical analogy of our spiritual intimacy with God. The joy, the pleasure, the sacredness, right? And this is what God had made sex for. It's absolutely incredible. I absolutely love it. Okay. Let's go back to, well, maybe I'll come back to Matthew 19:9 in a second. But there is a word there that we're going to discuss. Jesus uses the word porneia when he talks about divorce. And the word adultery, which I'll show you that word in the Greek. It's different. I'll show you that. So if you want to take a picture of that one, you can always go get your Strong's Concordance. Mokeia, okay? That is the act of committing adultery, all right? Wow, when we look at Matthew 19:9 in a second here, you'll see that Jesus used the word porneia instead of mokeia. And you're like, wow, that's interesting. So the reason he was saying divorce was permitted was because of porneia, not mokeia. And you're like, oh my goodness, this really broadens the concept of what frees a person to leave a marital covenant, as Jesus was talking. Okay, we'll look at that in a second. I want to give a few more. I'll give you some scriptures with this too, okay? All right. So we're going to describe porneia a little bit more. I'm going to drop it down a little bit. So when we talk about the word porneia or porneu, that word group describes many various extramarital modes of behavior that are sexually immoral, okay? I'm going to list some here. Like that word porneia, as I said, was translated differently in the New Testament. It's either 25 or 26 times the word was used, but it was used in translation differently. For instance, it was translated immoral or immorality in these verses, and it's mostly in the book of Revelation, okay? Revelation chapter 9, verse 21. Revelation 14, verse 8. Revelation 17, verses 2 and 4. Revelation 18:3, and Revelation 19:2. It was translated as immoralities. And that was really a spiritual thing that was being talked about there too. Now, incest is porneia. And this one is broader than you think, okay? 1 Corinthians 5:1 talks about this incest. And there's many examples of this in Scripture. And, you know, people think incest is a brother and sister having sex. Or, like in 1 Corinthians, a son was sleeping with his dad's wife, okay? But the one I'm more concerned about in our day and age, even though sexual perverse is big, is emotional incest with parents and children, or uncles and nephews or nieces, etc. Okay? It brings a curse. And you can go into generational curse studies at my website and also Soul Ties, and you'll see yourself getting free of these things. Because with the advent of the sexual revolution in the 60s and the free sex, which there was never such a thing, God has always made us responsible for our actions, and sex was the most important one created for us, besides worshiping Him. This brought in a divorce rate unheard of, including the church, which leaves single parents. Single parents are left to fend for themselves with their children. Now, what has unfortunately happened in our society is these single parents are emotionally depleted, and they don't have the capacity to handle everything. So emotionally, they will connect with their kids. If they're not mature, if they're not holy and careful, they'll connect with their children emotionally with incest. They'll treat them almost as a spouse, and it robs the kid of a child-parent relationship, okay? That is incest as well, okay? We're not just talking sexual. Now, 1 Corinthians 7, verse 2, various illicit sexual activity is going to be included in this word, porneia. Okay? And one that's obvious to me is bestiality. Leviticus 18:23. We need to get into this at all. Okay? And then a hot topic for our day and age is homosexuality and lesbianism. Okay? Jude 7 talks about this. I'm not going to beat a dead horse over that. Any of these sins are all the same sin in the sense of perverse. One, I don't want to sit here and judge people on a certain sin. Like people will say really bad things about homosexuals, but then they themselves are having an emotional incest relationship with their kids. I'm like, it's just as perverse. So when we can stop doing the judgment thing and just move towards holiness and kindness? Holiness requires a response to God's holiness. He made the rules. He said He created us with a purpose. He knows how we're supposed to function. He's laid out ground rules. He's put up guide rails, and He lays it before us. And that's the simplicity. And the first step in understanding God's will is the moral compass of God, which is the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. Okay, about anyone can understand those. And the rebellious nature of man is like, no thanks. I'll make up my own. And that's what we talk about at B2B, is the essence of sin is being independent of God. That's what was introduced in the garden, okay? Satan's like, hey, guess what? You could be like God and not need God. That's the fallen nature of man, and that's why we go off on different paths all the time, making up our own stuff, including traditions of ceremonies and having the state or must have the signature of pastor to be married. I'll be honest with you, that's not true. Okay, it's not true. It's not in the scriptures. Okay, could it be something that is fun and enjoyable to have ceremony? Yeah, but it's not needed. That's what I'm getting at. Okay, write this one down, and you can go read Deuteronomy chapter 22. It's on sexual morality in marriage. Okay, this one stuck out to me as I studied this. This is New King James Version. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, so understanding the Jewish culture, there would be a period of betrothal before the marriage ceremony, which would include sex. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her, meaning basically he's raping her, and lies with her, has sex with her, and they are found out, the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver. And she shall be his wife because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days. The concept is very clear to me. Sexual activity was meant to initiate the covenant of marriage and to only remain in the covenant of marriage. Because that's what it was used for. Period. The body was created not for us, it was created for the Lord. And He gave us sex as a way of understanding our spiritual intimacy with Him. Only with Him. Clear as a bell to me. You know, people say porneia is fornication, or fornicate, and I'm like, that is the cheapest way to ever try to insult the scriptures, because theologians still struggle with this. It's more than fornication. And actually, the way we use it in today's market, it's to bind people to certain rules or regulations and make sure that they have to do this before they get that. It's like controlling people's lives. You choose who you want to marry. If you're having sex with someone, that's your marriage spouse. That's who you're married to. That's what Scripture teaches here. That's why you're not supposed to gradually enter into covenants at all in the Scriptures, and no one teaches what a covenant is. A covenant is when two people decide to lay their life down one for another, and there has to be a sacrifice involved. The sacrifice is, I die to myself to live for you. I prove that by giving you myself. Spirit, soul, body.